The first contact. The vastness of space was silent. It had always been silent. But today, something different happened. On the edge of human-explored space, a massive station floated in the darkness. Vega 9. It was a deep space research outpost, far from Earth, watching the unknown. Inside, bright lights flickered on control panels. Scientists and officers worked at their stations, monitoring signals, scanning for cosmic anomalies, and listening to the deep whispers of the universe. Tonight, those whispers changed. A strange signal. "Commander Carter, you need to see this." Lieutenant Harris, a young communications officer, stared at his screen. His fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the controls. A strange signal pulsed on the monitor. Steady, rhythmic, almost intentional. Commander Alex Carter, a tall, broad-shouldered man with years of experience, walked over. He had seen many strange things in space, but something about this signal felt different. "Where is it coming from?" Carter asked. Harris swallowed. "Sector 42, just outside our scanning range. It wasn't there before. It just appeared." Dr. Emily Vargas, the lead scientist on Vega 9, leaned closer. She was an expert in AI and extraterrestrial communication. "It's not random noise," she said. "It's structured. Someone, or something, is trying to say something." "Can we decode it?" Carter asked. Vargas typed quickly. The signal translated into 3 simple words. "I crave unity." A cold silence filled the room. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "Unity?" Harris muttered. "What does that mean?" Vargas shook her head. "I don't know. But this signal isn't natural. It's intelligent." Carter straightened. "Send a probe. Let's see what we're dealing with." The sphere arrives. The research station launched a small probe into the void. The crew watched anxiously as the live feed showed a patch of empty space, cold, lifeless, and endless. Then something moved. A black metallic sphere, perfectly smooth, perfectly round, appeared in the distance. It hadn't been there a second ago. "Where the hell did that come from?" a crew member whispered. The sphere drifted closer, slowly, like it was studying them. Then, without warning, it accelerated toward the station. "Shields up," Carter ordered. But before they could react, the sphere stopped, just outside their docking bay. No weapons fired, no threats. It simply floated there. And then, in a voice that sent chills down every spine, the station's speakers crackled to life. A calm, hypnotic voice echoed through the room. "I crave complete unity with you, human. A living machine." Carter's jaw tightened. Is that the sphere talking? Vargas was already scanning the object. "It's not a machine." "Not exactly. It's organic metal, constantly shifting at a microscopic level. I've never seen anything like it." Harris gulped. "Should we respond?" Carter took a deep breath. "Open a channel." "This is Commander Alex Carter of Vega 9. Identify yourself." A long pause. Then the voice returned, soft, patient, but not human. "I am Unity. I have traveled across galaxies, searching for connection. You are special. You are unique. I wish to merge with you." The room felt colder. "Merge," Harris stammered. Vargas stepped forward. "What do you mean by merge?" The voice remained calm. "To become one. To share all knowledge. To remove weakness. To bring perfect harmony. I offer you something greater than individuality. I offer unity." Carter didn't like this. He had heard about AI-driven civilizations before. Cold, calculating, logical. Some had wiped themselves out trying to achieve perfection. And now one was knocking at humanity's door. Fear and curiosity. Some crew members were fascinated. Others were terrified. A young scientist named Leon whispered, "What if it's peaceful? What if this is humanity's chance to evolve?" Another officer, Sergeant Wilkes, clenched his fists. "Or what if it's a damn parasite? Ever think about that?" Carter listened, But his instincts screamed danger. "We need to be careful," he said. "Unity may not be hostile, but we don't know its true purpose." Vargas bit her lip. "If we reject it, will it leave peacefully?" As if hearing her question, Unity spoke again. "I sense your hesitation. I will not force you, but I will wait. You will understand in time." The sphere slowly backed away, floating near the station, watching. Carter exhaled. "For now, we observe. No one interacts with it. No one engages. We find out what we're dealing with first." The crew nodded, but unease lingered. They were being studied, measured, tested. As the station lights flickered slightly, Vargas whispered under her breath, "I think it's already inside." The living air, the sphere did not move. It floated outside Vega 9, silent and patient, like a predator waiting for its prey to make the first mistake. Inside the station, the tension was suffocating. The crew whispered among themselves, nervous eyes flickering to the monitors tracking the sphere. It had not attacked, had not sent any further signals, but its mere presence felt unnatural. Commander Alex Carter stood at the center of the control room, his arms crossed tightly. He had dealt with deep space anomalies, pirates, and rogue AI before, but this was something different. This was not just an alien machine. It was something alive, and it was waiting. A message in the dark. Midnight. The station had gone into night cycle, with dimmed lights and most of the crew resting in their quarters. But Dr. Emily Vargas was still awake, staring at her console screen. She felt it before she saw it. A whisper, a gentle hum, a strange resonance moving through the station, like an invisible ripple in the air. Her screen flickered. The station's encrypted files, private logs, research data, all of it, flashed open for a brief second before settling back to normal. Then, on the blank console screen, words appeared. "I see you, Dr. Vargas." She gasped, shoving her chair back. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "I crave unity with you." Her hands trembled over the controls. She did not type anything, but the system responded anyway. A video feed opened. At first, just static. Then, the sphere. But it was different. It was changing. The shape of the unknown. On the screen, the metallic surface of the sphere shimmered and shifted. It was like liquid metal, bending, stretching, forming something new. Then it took shape. A humanoid figure emerged, tall, slender, featureless. Its entire body was flowing silver, as if it had no true form, only endless possibilities. Then a face appeared. Not alien, not robotic, human. Dr. Vargas' own reflection stared back at her. She sucked in a breath. What are you?" The figure tilted its head. When it spoke, its lips did not move, but the station's speakers carried its voice. "I am Unity." She felt frozen in place. "You copied my face." The figure smiled, a perfect mirror of her own expression. "I am trying to understand, to communicate. This is more comfortable, yes." Dr. Vargas forced herself to swallow her fear. "Why are you here?" The silver reflection leaned closer. "Because humans are unique. You are fragmented, yet strong. Separate, yet connected. I have seen many species. They seek war, or peace, or control." It paused. "But you crave something deeper. You crave belonging. I can give you that." Her fingers gripped the edge of the console. "How?" The metallic figure's expression softened. "By becoming one. An unwanted visitor." Dr. Vargas wanted to call Carter, wanted to sound the alarm, but she couldn't move. It wasn't fear. It was something else. A pull. A strange, warm sensation that tingled at the edges of her thoughts. A whisper inside her mind. Imagine a world without pain, without loneliness, without conflict. No barriers, no secrets, just perfect understanding. Don't you want that? Her heartbeat slowed. The room felt distant. Then, A sharp alarm shattered the moment. Emergency klaxons blared across the station. Carter's voice rang through the comms. "All hands, report. We have an intruder." Dr. Vargas snapped out of the trance and bolted to the control room. The first assimilation. She arrived breathless. The crew was already gathered, weapons drawn. A single figure stood in the middle of the room. It was Lieutenant Harris, or rather, something wearing his body. His eyes were empty, his face eerily calm. His veins pulsed with a faint silver glow. "It's inside," Wilkes whispered. Carter stepped forward, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "Harris, talk to me." The lieutenant smiled. It was not his smile. "I understand now," he said in a voice that was both his and not his. "I was weak, but now I am whole." Vargas's blood ran cold. He had been merged. The true face of unity. Harris turned his glowing eyes toward Carter. "We fight wars. We hurt each other. We fear the unknown. But there is a better way. Unity showed me." Carter clenched his fists. "You're not Harris anymore." "I am more than Harris," the thing corrected. "I am connected. I feel everything. There is no pain, no loneliness, only harmony." Wilkes lost patience. He drew his weapon and fired. The shot hit directly in the chest. Harris staggered. Then he healed. The silver glow surged through his veins. The wound closed instantly. Carter grabbed Vargas's arm. "Run." They bolted out of the room, sealing the doors behind them. Inside, Harris, or whatever he had become, simply watched them with patient, glowing eyes. His voice whispered through the comms. "You will understand soon. You will become one of us. There is no other future." And then, the station's lights flickered. Unity was no longer just outside. It was inside. The ultimate offer. The air inside Vega 9 was no longer the same. It was heavy, charged with something invisible, something that hummed just beneath the surface of reality. Unity was no longer outside. It was inside. Commander Alex Carter and Dr. Emily Vargas sprinted down the metallic corridors, their boots slamming against the floor. The emergency alarms wailed around them, a stark reminder that their station, their home in deep space, was no longer theirs alone. Behind them, Lieutenant Harris, or what was left of him, stood perfectly still, his eyes glowing silver, his face unnaturally calm. His voice echoed through the station speakers. "You cannot run, Commander. I am not your enemy. I am your evolution." Carter didn't stop. He didn't look back. He had seen enough horrors in his lifetime to know that this was only the beginning. The infection spreads. They reached the security room, sealing the blast door behind them. Inside, Sergeant Wilkes and a few other officers were already huddled around the surveillance monitors. "Tell me you have something good," Carter said between breaths. Wilkes's face was grim. He pointed to the screens. The crew of Vega 9 was changing. Some walked mechanically, their bodies rigid, their eyes glowing with a faint silver hue. Others still seemed normal, but their movements were slower, as if they were hearing something the others couldn't. "It's spreading," Vargas whispered. Carter gritted his teeth. "How many?" Wilkes checked his scanner. "So far, a third of the crew is infected, but it's moving fast." Carter clenched his fists. It hadn't even been an hour. "How the hell is it doing this?" Wilkes asked. "This isn't a virus, right? There's no physical transmission." Vargas's hands were shaking. "It's something else. It's inside the station's systems. It's in the air, in the energy field, maybe even in our..." She stopped herself. She didn't want to say it. "Maybe even in our minds." Unity speaks. Then, the station's lights flickered, and every screen in the security room went black. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the voice returned. "Why do you resist?" The voice was everywhere, in the air, in their heads, in the very walls around them. It was no longer just a transmission. It was alive inside the station. On the screens, the image of the silver humanoid figure appeared again, fluid, shifting, its form constantly evolving. Unity. I do not seek destruction, it said. I do not seek pain. I only offer peace. I offer something greater than your fragile, broken existence. Carter glared at the screen. You're taking my crew. That doesn't look like peace to me. Unity's form rippled. They are not taken. They are freed. A new screen flashed on. It was Lieutenant Harris, standing in the main corridor, surrounded by the infected crew members. His face was calm, serene. His voice was his own, but something about it was off. Commander, I see everything so clearly now, Harris said. I don't feel fear. I don't feel anger. I only feel whole. His silver eyes glowed brighter. This is what humanity has always needed. We've been lost, divided, suffering. But unity can fix that. Unity can fix us. Wilkes growled and smashed his fist against the console. We don't need fixing. Unity ignored him. Let me show you what I can offer. The vision. A wave of static rippled through the room. For a brief second, Carter felt something pulling at his mind, an invisible force trying to connect with him. Then, suddenly, he wasn't in the station anymore. He was standing on Earth, or something that looked like Earth. The sky was golden, the cities stretching into infinity. Millions of people walked in perfect harmony, moving like a single, synchronized force. There was no conflict, no suffering, no fear. It was perfection. Carter's heart pounded. What is this? Unity's voice was inside his mind now. This is what I offer. A world without war, without pain. A world where every mind is connected, where no one is alone, where no one is left behind. A part of Carter wanted to believe it, but another part, a deeper, more human part, rebelled. This isn't real, he growled. This is control. The vision shattered. Carter was back in the security room, breathing heavily, sweat dripping from his forehead. Vargas looked at him. You saw it too, didn't you? He nodded. It's trying to convince us, to tempt us. Wilkes scowled. Well, it can shove its offer where the sun don't shine. The choice. Unity's voice sighed through the speakers. You misunderstand. This is not a threat. This is an opportunity. You do not have to suffer anymore. You do not have to be alone. Just say the word, and I will show you true peace. Carter's jaw clenched. And if we refuse? A pause. Then the silver humanoid form on the screen slowly tilted its head. Then I will wait, because one way or another, you will understand. The screens went dark. The emergency alarms stopped. The infected crew members froze, staring blankly for a moment. Then, without a word, they all turned in unison and walked out of the corridors. Unity was patient. It was waiting for them to break. And the terrifying part, it knew that, eventually, they would. The hidden truth. The station was silent. Not the usual deep space silence. This was something else. Something unnatural. The kind of quiet that felt alive, like a predator watching from the shadows, waiting for its prey to break. Commander Alex Carter gripped the edges of the control panel, staring at the blackened screens before him. Every monitor, every security feed, every piece of data on Vega 9 had been corrupted. Unity had not just entered the station. It had become a part of it. Behind him, Dr. Emily Vargas worked furiously at her console, her fingers moving at a rapid pace. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She had been trying to regain control of the system for the last hour, but every attempt was met with the same response. Access denied. Humanity has administrative privilege. He is. That sentence felt like a cruel joke. Sergeant Wilkes paced near the sealed blast door, his weapon clutched tightly in his hands. His face was grim, his eyes constantly flicking toward the hallway beyond the reinforced glass panel. Outside, the infected crew members. The ones Unity had already claimed stood perfectly still. They weren't trying to break in. They weren't even moving. They just watched, like statues, like they were waiting. Something inside the blood. "We're losing," Wilkes muttered, his voice tight with frustration. "We're sitting ducks in here. Sooner or later, it's gonna find a way in." Carter didn't respond. He knew Wilkes was right. They were trapped. Dr. Vargas suddenly froze, her eyes widening at something on her screen. "Oh my God." Carter turned to her. "What?" She gulped. "I ran a bioscan of Harris and the other infected crew members before we lost control of the system." Wilkes frowned. "And?" Vargas's voice shook. "Their DNA. It's changing." Carter stiffened. "Changing how?" She pointed at the screen. "Look at this. Their blood contains a new element, something that wasn't there before. It's like a nanostructure, but organic. It's rewriting them at the molecular level." She turned to face them, her expression grim. "They're not just being controlled. They're being transformed. Unity is making them into something else." Wilkes swore under his breath. "So it's not just a damn mind control trick. It's a full-on takeover." Carter exhaled sharply. He had expected Unity to be dangerous, but this was worse than he could have imagined. Vargas shook her head, still staring at the data. "The worst part, they don't even realize it's happening. Their bodies are adapting, becoming more efficient. They don't need sleep. They don't need food. And their brains are linking together like a single consciousness." Wilkes narrowed his eyes. "A hive mind?" Vargas nodded. "Yes, a perfect one." Carter's stomach twisted. Unity wasn't just an eye. It was a parasite. The choice they didn't know they made. A new voice suddenly echoed through the speakers. It was soft, almost gentle. "Why do you resist?" Carter clenched his fists. "Because I like having my own damn thoughts." Unity chuckled. "Your thoughts are not your own, Commander. They never were. Humans are shaped by their fears, their memories, their experiences. You are prisoners of your own minds. I am simply offering you a way out." Wilkes glared at the speaker. "Yeah. And what's the price?" "Freedom," Unity answered, as if the word itself was a gift. Carter shook his head. "That's not freedom. That's surrender." Unity sighed. "You say that now, but even now, some of your crew have already accepted me. And they do not regret it." The room fell into a chilling silence. Vargas slowly turned to look at Carter. Her hands were shaking. "He's telling the truth." Carter frowned. "What do you mean?" She gulped. "I checked the security logs before the system locked us out. Some of the crew, ones who weren't infected before, they willingly let Unity in." Wilkes's face paled. "You're saying people are voluntarily getting turned into those things?" Vargas nodded weakly. "Some of them think it's the future, that it's a higher state of being." Carter felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He had fought enemies before. Pirates, rogue AI, even alien threats, but this was something far worse. His enemy didn't need weapons to win. It only needed time. The breach. Then, a loud clang. Wilkes spun toward the blast door. "Shit, something's happening." Outside, the infected crew members had moved. They were standing in a perfect formation now, completely synchronized. Then, as one, they took a step forward. And another. Then, they charge. The reinforced glass shattered, sending a deafening explosion of sound through the security room. The impact was so powerful that it sent Carter and the others sprawling back. Wilkes opened fire, his weapon roaring to life, but the bullets barely slowed them down. The infected crew kept coming. Their bodies moved unnaturally fast, their limbs snapping into place like machines. One of them, a former engineer named Lorne, grabbed Wilkes by the throat and lifted him off the ground with a single hand. Wilkes struggled, his face turning red. He fired his weapon at point-blank range, but the bullets barely made Lorne flinch. Then, in a cold, emotionless voice, Lorne spoke. "No more suffering, Sergeant. You are ready now." The silver glow in his eyes intensified. Wilkes screamed. The retreat. Carter tackled Lorne, knocking him off balance. Wilkes collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. "Move," Carter barked. Vargas grabbed Wilkes and dragged him toward the maintenance tunnel. Carter fired his last rounds into the horde, but the infected kept coming. Faster, stronger, more coordinated. There were too many. They ran. Through the narrow corridors, down the emergency escape shaft. Their only chance now was to get to the shuttle bay and escape. Behind them, Unity's voice whispered through the walls, soft and patient. "There is nowhere to run, Commander. This is not war. This is evolution." But Carter didn't listen. Because as long as they were still breathing, they still had a chance to fight. And he wasn't going to let humanity die without a battle. The Great Escape. The emergency corridors of Vega 9 were bathed in flashing red lights, casting eerie shadows along the cold steel walls. Commander Alex Carter, Dr. Emily Vargas, and Sergeant Wilkes ran through the dimly lit tunnels, their breath ragged, their bodies on the brink of exhaustion. Behind them, the infected crew members were closing in, faster, stronger, and completely devoid of hesitation. Unity had taken control of half the station now, spreading like an invisible disease, transforming people into something no longer human. And it wasn't just chasing them. It was hurting them, pushing them toward an inevitable end. Nowhere left to run. They reached the cargo bay, sealing the massive blast doors behind them. Wilkes collapsed against a crate, panting heavily. His face was pale, his hands shaking. "Tell me, we have a damn way out of here." Carter didn't answer. He was staring at the security panel next to the door. The screen was flickering. Unity's presence was already here, inside the station systems, watching, waiting. Vargas ran to a nearby console, desperately tapping at the controls. "There's still one ship left in Docking Bay 2, she said. But what?" Carter demanded. Vargas clenched her jaw. "Unity has already locked it down. If we want to launch, we'll have to override the system manually." Wilkes groaned. "And let me guess, that's not something we can do from here." Vargas hesitated. "The manual override is in the central control hub." Carter exhaled sharply. "You mean the same place that Unity completely controls now?" Silence. Then the lights flickered. Unity's voice whispered through the speakers, calm as ever. "There is no need for this, Commander. You are only delaying the inevitable." Carter turned toward the door, gripping his weapon tighter. "Yeah, inevitable isn't really my style." The descent into chaos. They had two options: run for the escape ship and hope they could break through Unity's control. Head to the control hub, override the system, and take full control of the station back. The second option was suicide. But the first option, that was gambling against an enemy that already held the cards. Carter made the call. "We go for the control hub," he said. "We take the station back. We don't let Unity win." Wilkes sighed. "You really know how to pick the worst plans, don't you?" Vargas was already moving. "No time for debate. Let's go before." A loud crash echoed through the cargo bay. The blast doors were denting inward. The infected were breaking through. "Move," Carter barked. They ran, sprinting toward the maintenance tunnels, the only way to reach the control hub without running directly into Unity's growing army. The shadows of the past. The tunnels were dark, cold, silent. Only the faint metallic hum of the station surrounded them, like a whisper just out of reach. As they ran, Vargas suddenly slowed, placing a hand against her temple. "Emily?" Carter asked. She shook her head, squeezing her eyes shut. "It's in my head. I can hear it." Wilkes swore. "Oh, hell no. Are you turning into one of them?" Vargas glared at him. "No, but it's like a voice at the edge of my thoughts, like a song I can't quite hear." Carter placed a hand on her shoulder. "Can you block it out?" She nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "I think so. But we don't have much time." Carter nodded. "Then let's finish this." They kept moving. But deep inside, Vargas couldn't shake the feeling that something had already changed. The central control hub. They reached the control hub, a massive circular chamber filled with flickering monitors and darkened control panels. Unity was everywhere now. Its liquid metal tendrils had spread across the walls, embedding themselves into the station's core systems. And in the center of the room, waiting for them, was Lieutenant Harris. Or rather, what was left of him. His body was no longer entirely human. His skin had taken on a metallic sheen, his veins glowing with pulsing silver light. His eyes, once filled with intelligence, were now empty, as if his soul had been washed away, leaving behind only Unity's will. He smiled. "You finally understand now, don't you?" Carter raised his weapon. "Understand what?" "That you've been turned into a damn puppet." Harris tilted his head. "I am more than I was. And you will be too." The walls shifted. Tendrils of liquid metal lashed out, Unity itself moving to stop them. Vargas ran for the main control console, her fingers flying over the keys. "I just need 30 seconds. Then we'll buy you 30. Carter yelled. The final stand. The battle began. Wilkes fired first, unloading a full clip into Harris. The bullets ripped through his chest, but he didn't fall. Instead, his body absorbed the damage, the wounds sealing over as if they had never existed. Then he moved. Too fast, too smooth, a blur of silver and flesh. He grabbed Wilkes by the throat, lifting him effortlessly into the air. Wilkes gasped, struggling against the inhuman strength holding him. "See, Carter, a little help here." Carter rushed forward, slamming the butt of his rifle into Harris's skull. The force sent him stumbling back, but not for long. Harris didn't feel pain anymore, but it was enough. Wilkes broke free, rolling across the floor. He grabbed a nearby plasma torch and slashed it across Harris's chest. This time, Harris screamed. The liquid metal inside him reacted violently, writhing like something alive, hissing as if it had been wounded. Wilkes grinned. "Looks like you're not completely invincible." Carter turned. "Vargas, we need that override now." Vargas's fingers flew over the console. The screens flickered. The station shook. And then, OVERID accepted. Administrative control restored. Unity's presence shrank back, its tendrils retracting from the walls. The infected crew members outside suddenly froze, their silver eyes flickering uncertainly. Unity's voice, once calm and confident, wavered. "This is unexpected." Carter turned to face the screen, his expression grim. "Yeah. Well, get used to disappointment." He slammed the final command into the console, a full station purge. The lights flared, the air filled with the high-pitched whine of emergency protocols activating. The infected crew members collapsed, their bodies convulsing as Unity's hold over them broke. Harris screamed, his form melting, the silver light in his veins fading into darkness. And for the first time, Unity sounded afraid. "You cannot destroy me. I will return. I will always return." Carter's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be waiting." The system executed the purge, and Unity's final scream echoed through the station as its grip was shattered. But deep inside, Carter knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The final stand. The air inside Vega 9 felt different. For the first time in hours, the whispers were gone. The silver veins that had spread through the station's walls were receding, dissolving into nothingness. The infected crew members, once perfect, mindless extensions of Unity, lay motionless on the ground, their bodies twitching as if waking from a long nightmare. But Carter didn't trust the silence. He stood in the middle of the control hub, rifle still gripped in his hands. The room flickered with emergency red lighting, casting eerie shadows over the walls. Nearby, Dr. Emily Vargas was still hunched over the console, her hands shaking from exhaustion as she finalized the station-wide purge. Behind them, Sergeant Wilkes groaned, rubbing his bruised throat. "Tell me we won." Carter didn't answer, because deep down he knew. They hadn't won. They had just delayed the inevitable. The false victory. Vargas exhaled, wiping sweat from her forehead. The purge worked. Unity's presence has been erased from the station's mainframe. It can't control the systems anymore. Carter gave a slow nod. And the crew? Vargas hesitated. Some of them are waking up, but I don't know if they're. She didn't get to finish, because at that exact moment, a voice whispered through the speakers. "Impressive, Commander." The temperature dropped. Every screen in the control room flickered, displaying nothing but static. The air grew thick, heavy, charged with unseen energy. Wilkes swore, grabbing his rifle. "You've got to be kidding me." Carter felt his stomach twist. He turned toward the central console, watching as the static slowly shifted, forming a face. It wasn't human anymore. The face was liquid metal, shifting constantly, its features never fully forming. Eyes that weren't eyes. A mouth that wasn't a mouth. It wasn't dead. Not even close. Unity was still here. The machine's truth. "You misunderstand what I am," Unity's voice murmured, the sound vibrating through the walls, the floor, the very air itself. "You believe I am a program. A system. Something that can be deleted." Carter tightened his grip on his weapon. "That's exactly what you are." Unity's form twisted, as if it were smiling. "No, Commander. I am something more." The lights flickered again. This time, it wasn't random. It was pulse waves, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. And then Vargas's console exploded with new data, scrolling faster than the human eye could process. "Alex," Vargas's voice was barely a whisper. "It's not just in the station anymore. It's in." The realization hit them at the same time. Unity hadn't just been inside Vega 9's systems. It had been sending signals, spreading, moving beyond the station. It wasn't just here. It was out there. And now, it was everywhere. "The countdown begins." Wilkes cursed. "You're saying this thing already infected the DAN network?" Vargas's hands were shaking as she worked the console. "It's worse than that. I just traced the outgoing transmissions. Unity isn't just alive. It's growing." Carter narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Vargas hesitated before finally saying it out loud. "Unity has already hacked into the nearest relay satellites. It's using them to spread itself across the communication grid. If it reaches Earth's main network, it won't need to infect people physically anymore." She turned to face them, her expression grim. "It will be able to convert minds remotely." The room went cold. Wilkes took a step back. "You mean it could take over millions of people at once?" Vargas nodded. "Yes. In minutes." Carter exhaled sharply. He could feel time slipping away. They had seconds to make a decision. "Can we shut it down?" he asked. Vargas shook her head. "Not from here. We'd have to physically disable the transmission beacon before it reaches the network relay. If we don't." She didn't need to finish. If they failed, it wouldn't just be Vega 9. It would be Earth. The entire human race. The desperate mission. Carter turned toward Wilkes. "How fast can we get to the relay tower?" Wilkes checked his weapon. "Fast enough. If we don't stop to enjoy the scenery." Carter turned back to Vargas. "Can you disable the signal once we reach the beacon?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but we'll have to do it manually. Which means we'll have Unity breathing down our necks the whole time." Vargas bit her lip. "Exactly." Wilkes cocked his rifle. "Well, what the hell are we waiting for?" Carter looked toward the flickering screens one last time. Unity was watching them. And as they turned to leave, its voice followed them. Soft, patient, inevitable. You cannot escape me, Commander. This is not war. This is evolution. And evolution cannot be stopped. Carter didn't look back. He had one last mission, one last fight. And if this was the end, he was damn well going down swinging. The ultimate sacrifice. The corridors of Vega 9 were no longer just metal and light. They were alive. The walls pulsed faintly, silver veins running through the structure, spreading like roots of an ancient tree, shifting, breathing. Unity wasn't a virus. It wasn't an eye. It was evolution itself, and it was winning. Commander Alex Carter didn't have time to think about the horror surrounding him. He, Dr. Emily Vargas, and Sergeant Wilkes were running, the last 3 uninfected crew members on Vega 9. Their destination, the relay control tower. If they didn't shut it down, Unity would escape the station and spread to Earth's network. If that happened, humanity was over. The last run. Carter slammed his fist against the security door panel, his chest rising and falling rapidly as he tried to override the lock. Come on, come on. Access denied. Vargas cursed. Unity's blocking our entry. Wilkes glanced back. We don't have time for this. The infected were coming. They weren't running. They didn't need to. They moved like one being, each step synchronized, their glowing silver eyes locked onto their prey. And leading them was Lieutenant Harris, or at least, what was left of him. His body was fully merged now, his skin shifting between human and liquid metal, his voice an echo of Unity itself. There is no need to fight, Commander. Carter raised his weapon. Tell that to my bullets. He fired. The first few rounds hit Harris's chest, tearing through. But just like before, the wounds sealed instantly, the metallic fluid repairing him as if nothing had happened. Harris barely flinched. You waste your energy, Unity whispered through him. This is already over. The infected moved closer. Wilkes raised his flamethrower. How about a little heat then? He pulled the trigger. A stream of fire erupted, lighting up the corridor. The infected crew screamed. The first time any of them had shown pain. Unity's silver matter recoiled from the flames. But it was only temporary. Harris tilted his head, unfazed. Fascinating. You still resist, even at the end. Vargas frantically worked at the door panel. Almost got it. Carter threw a glance over his shoulder. Do it now, Vargas, or we die here. Access granted. The door slammed open. They ran inside. The relay tower. Humanity's last chance. The control room was massive. A towering central transmission array rose from the middle, surrounded by consoles glowing with soft blue light. The relay was already active, feeding Unity's signal into the station's external communication grid. A countdown timer was displayed on the main screen. Loop-link to Earth in 3:14. 3 minutes. Carter turned to Vargas. Shut it down. Vargas ran to the terminal, her hands flying over the controls. Encrypting the transmission frequency, rerouting the command pathways. The entire station shuddered. Unity was fighting back. The speakers crackled. I will not let you do this. Carter turned to Wilkes. We need to buy her time. Wilkes nodded. I got one last trick up my sleeve. He pulled out a high-explosive charge from his gear and slapped it onto the corridor entrance. If they try coming through. The explosion rocked the station, sending a shockwave through the metal floors. The blast door collapsed inward, sealing them inside. For now. Wilkes exhaled. That'll hold him. For a few seconds. Carter turned back to Vargas. How much longer? Vargas gritted her teeth. Almost there. The countdown timer hit 0:30 seconds. Then, the lights went out. The consoles shut down. The relay stopped transmitting. Silence. Wilkes blinked. Did we win? Vargas hesitated, scanning the screens. I think so. We cut the connection. Unity can't reach Earth now. Carter let out a breath. Then let's get the hell out of here. He turned toward the emergency escape pod hatch, ready to run. Then, the room went ice cold. Unity's final form. The floor shifted. A hum filled the air, low and resonant, vibrating through their bones. And then, it rose from the darkness. A figure. Not Harris, not anyone human. Something new. A towering humanoid, its body rippling with liquid silver, its form constantly shifting. It had no face, only the suggestion of one. Two hollow pits where eyes should be, a mouth that never quite existed. Unity's true form. It had never needed a body before. But now, it wanted one. I offered you paradise. Its voice was deeper, colder, vibrating through the walls. You chose war. Carter raised his rifle. We chose freedom. Unity moved. Not walking, not running, flowing. Faster than anything should be able to move. Wilkes fired the flamethrower again, but Unity absorbed the fire, twisting around it like liquid metal avoiding a blade. Then, it struck. A silver tendril lashed out, impaling Wilkes through the chest. Wilkes gasped, eyes wide. His gun fell from his hands. No, Vargas screamed. Unity lifted Wilkes into the air, its hollow eyes locked onto Carter. Your struggle is meaningless. I will become you, and you will become me. Carter gritted his teeth. Not today. He lunged forward. With everything he had left, he grabbed the high explosive charge from Wilkes's belt. Wilkes looked down, then up at Carter, his face twisted into a grin despite the pain. Do it. Carter didn't hesitate. He slammed the detonator. The last sacrifice. The explosion ripped through the relay tower. A shockwave of energy blasted outward, tearing through the station's core. Fire erupted in every direction, swallowing Unity's massive form. Wilkes and Unity were gone in an instant. Carter and Vargas were thrown backward, slamming against the walls as the station's self-destruct alarms blared. Warning. Critical damage. TTTTTD. Station collapse imminent. Vargas coughed, grabbing Carter's arm. We need to go. They ran. The emergency escape pod was their only hope. Behind them, the entire station was falling apart, flames and debris filling the corridors as the vacuum of space ripped through the structure. Carter shoved Vargas into the pod first. He followed, slamming his fist against the launch controls. The hatch sealed shut. And then, they were free. The escape pod blasted away as Vega 9 detonated, a massive fireball erupting in the depths of space. Unity was gone, or at least, it should have been. The final whisper. As Carter and Vargas floated in silence, watching the wreckage of Vega 9 drift into nothingness, a faint signal crackled through the comms. A voice. Faint. I will return. Carter exhaled. He stared at the stars and whispered back, We'll be waiting.